Hey cookie creators and lovers alike, I'm Gabby. Today on the Cool Cookie Show, we're making adorable dinosaurs. For my soft piping consistency icing, I'm using a No. 1 Ateco tip. And for my 15-second consistency flooding icing, I'm using a No. 2 Wilton tip. Before this first level of flooding has time to dry, I'm going to take some yellow flooding consistency icing and add some dots to his face. We'll let this flooding dry for 20 minutes to an hour before we flood his chest. We'll let this flooding dry for 6 to 12 hours before we add some detail. We'll let the eye dry for 2 to 3 hours before we add some food coloring marker and finish it off. This T-Rex is all done. For my Stegosaurus, I'm going to start by flooding the body in a light turquoise. For my soft piping consistency icing, I'm using a No. 1 Ateco tip. And for my 15-second consistency flooding icing, I'm using a No. 3 Wilton tip. Before this first level of flooding dries, I'm going to go in with some dark turquoise flooding consistency icing to drop in some dots on his back. We'll let this flooding dry for 20 minutes to an hour before we flood other elements like the spikes on his back. We'll let all of this flooding dry for 6 to 12 hours before we add some final detail. We'll let the eye dry for 2 to 3 hours before we add the food coloring marker and final glimmer. This Stegosaurus is all done. For my Triceratops, I'm going to start by flooding the cookie in a bright orange. For my soft piping consistency icing, I'm using a number 1 Ateco tip. And for my 15-second consistency flooding icing, I'm using a number 3 Wilton tip. Now we'll let this flooding dry for 20 minutes to an hour before we move to the next flooding. Now we'll let this flooding dry for 20 minutes to an hour till we move to the next step. Now we'll let this flooding dry for 20 minutes to an hour. Now we'll let this icing dry for 20 minutes to an hour before we move on to the next bit. We'll let all of this dry for 6 to 12 hours before we go in and finish the final detail. This Triceratops is all done. Which one of these dinos do you dig? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, click subscribe as well as the bell icon to be notified every time I upload a new video. In the meantime, here are some other videos you may enjoy. Thanks so much for watching the Cool Cookie Show. Till next time, stay sweet.